WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. On this Thursday morning, we visit this morning with State Senator Joe Pittman. And Senator Pittman comes to us courtesy of Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning to you.
Todd, good morning to you.
Good to have you with us here this morning.
It's good to be in Indiana and to be here in person.
It's good to be had, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
The budget, of course, is at the top of a lot of people's minds, and the way those negotiations unfolded, a little bit late, but just a couple of days, and you were able to get it done. Satisfied, unsatisfied?
I'm satisfied. It's not the budget that I would have written, but as we've talked before, there are 253 legislators, and there is a governor, and we would have 254 different budgets. But when I look at the overall product, I look at the amount of money that has come in from tax revenues and also federal stimulus dollars and how we've managed those dollars, I think we've put ourselves in a good position for the inevitable recession. And what I mean by that is we doubled our rainy day fund balance, basically our savings account. It is now $5 billion, which is a number that we have not seen ever, I believe, in the history of our budgeting. So we have that safety net available to us. The other thing that we did that hasn't been talked about a lot is we paid back many of the accounting tricks, I will say, that we used over the last several years to balance budgets in difficult times. I'll give you a couple examples. About 6 or 7 years ago, the legislature borrowed $300 million from the Unemployment Compensation Fund. We paid that back. About 6 or 7 years ago, we deferred payments to Medicaid providers. We paid that back on time. We accelerated moving the state police out of the motor license fund to make sure gas tax money gets used for roads and bridges. That was about $170 million. We're paying for the state police out of our general fund. They need every dollar and more, for sure. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me, but the bottom line is we're making sure the dollars that are meant to go to roads and bridges actually go to roads and bridges. So those were some significant pieces of the budget that I think were very important. It actually made the increase in spending a bit misleading because we are paying back bills that we should have paid years ago. And the other thing we did is that we reduced what I call the employer tax, which is the corporate net income tax. It's the highest in the nation, and it's made us uncompetitive when we talk about big employer opportunities in this state compared to our neighbors. And so I think that was significant. And we increased funding in very important areas, some of which we've heard about on your news reports locally as it relates to school districts, but also IUP in the state system.
Yeah, well, that state system one is the one that got a lot of play, and rightfully so. That's a significant investment by the state that maybe it has lagged behind for some time. It's basically what they asked for, and I know that after watching the hearings over the course of the last couple of years, you and others have demanded accountability from the state system, and that's a really important part of that whole equation.
Accountability is absolutely critical, and I believe, as we've talked before, that IUP has made some very difficult decisions. I'm not so convinced about their neighbors and their peers in the state system, but we have not had a very strong history of funding the state system. I think there is no doubt that the state system has to be right-sized simply because of the demographic realities that we are facing. But nevertheless, those schools are owned by the Commonwealth, and I'm quite hopeful that the increases that we received are going to help stabilize that entire system, and most importantly, make sure that the cost of education becomes more affordable for students. The state system hasn't increased tuition in 4 years. IUP cut its own tuition this year, and my hope is that those tuition increases are a thing of the past for several years to come.
We hear the word investment, and certainly that is an investment by the state in the state system schools and other investments made with this particular budget. A couple of moments ago, you used the term inevitable recession. That's a scary term.
Well, it's inevitable just in the history of where we see our economy. Recessions happen. But when you look at the inflation numbers that came out yesterday or 2 days ago, Inflation is out of control. Energy prices are out of control. And it's only a matter of time before that inflation continues to consume wages. And what I mean by that is disposable income. And as disposable income gets consumed and working families have to focus on the basic necessities of life, that's going to cause economic problems. I think what's going to be unique about this recession is that our labor force, in my experience, not just in this region, but from what I hear nationally, is so tight that that recession that's coming is not going to have a similar impact on loosening up the labor force. That's my biggest concern, is that we're going to experience this inflation even in recessionary times.
Yeah, and it's frightening to a lot of people, and especially those who get further away from having inside knowledge of what actually is going on with the economy, because they're hearing dire forecasts and they really don't know what they should be doing now for what they hear is going to be coming in less than 6 months or a year. So making the decisions that families have to make gets much, much more difficult.
No doubt. And the uncertainty and the unknown, I think, is even more difficult because it's hard to prepare and plan with the volatility that we're seeing on so many fronts.
Senator Joe Pittman with us this morning on Indiana in the Morning. Some other big issues that are out there. RGGI and Commonwealth Court's ruling, which doesn't end the whole RGGI debate at all. It just takes it another step down the road. Where do you stand on what happened with the court and where you expect things will go?
Well, ToddReggie is the issue that will never end, it seems. It's been a 3-year issue at the forefront of my mind, of the mind of Representative Struzzi, and really our entire community. What the Commonwealth Court did was a significant victory for working families and consumers of electricity. And why I say that is because the court looked at our arguments. And when I say our arguments, the Senate, labor unions, the owners of the plants, and said, this is a significant legal concern that you're raising in terms of this being potentially a tax. And they specifically noted that only 6% of the RGGI proceeds go to the administration of the program. And the difference between a tax and a fee is that a fee is designed to be used for the administration of something. Mm-hmm. A tax is when you collect revenue to spend it on something else. And it's indisputable that we have the constitutional authority to implement taxation. And so the court has basically said, hold tight. We're not going to implement this rule, because if we implement it and we find out in the next 6 months that we do believe that it is in fact unconstitutional, then the harm that has already occurred is irreparable. And so I think it's a significant ruling. It's a significant decision. But like you said, it's far from over. The Supreme Court is now going to be engaged. The governor's office has appealed that decision. So there's more chapters to be written. But what frustrates me, and what I have said to the governor, and I've said on your show previously, and I've begged and pleaded for a dialogue on how we can improve our environment outside of going through this executive order process. And I wish that we would have had leadership from the governor to bring the interested parties into the room and figure out what we could do to not only improve our environment, but protect our economy. I think there's a way, but we needed that leadership to help effectuate it.
Senator Joe Pittman with us this morning. A couple of other topics I wanted to hit on. Voter integrity. Election integrity is a big issue, especially this year. They're all election years, but in this year there will be a lot of statewide races, congressional races as well. I had a story this morning about voter ID and whether that's the right for Pennsylvania. Where are we on election integrity, and where should we be going?
I'm glad you brought that up, because election integrity is, in my opinion, fundamental to our entire constitutional republic. And I made some comments on the floor last week to that effect when we approved a constitutional question on voter identification. And let's remember what constitutional questions are. We as a legislature have to pass it twice. We've passed it once. We have to pass it next year. And then it goes before the voters on the ballot as a referendum as to whether or not our Constitution should require that identification be part of a voter's effort to vote. I think it's common sense. I think it's a no-brainer when you look at what we need identification for in this society. I don't think it's too much to ask. So that's one piece of it. The other thing that we did, and the governor signed it, and I was pleased to see that, is that we have banned the use of third-party funding for our elections, and that's commonly referred to as the Zuckerbucks. We made it very clear, and it's now against the law for third parties to come in and try to help counties fund their election cycles. That was happening mainly in the southeast counties. That is now illegal. That was very important. We also have helped provide some dollars to the counties so long as they assure us of a timely process in managing and counting ballots that are received through the mail and being very transparent about the numbers of ballots counted and yet to be counted. And again, our local electoral process, I think, is very good. It's very efficient, very effective, but there are some counties where they take time off, they take breaks, and they take several days to count the ballots, and that should not be the case. And so we've tightened up that process as well. There's a lot more to do on election integrity, in my opinion. Banning drop boxes, which we voted to do, but the governor will not support. But banning drop boxes, I think, is a very big piece of this that we also need to tackle.
One other item that we have time for this morning, we could go on for an hour or so.
We could have a double segment, I think.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk about the abortion issue and how the state is dealing with it. Is a constitutional amendment, is that the proper approach in your opinion?
In my opinion, it is. Roe v. Wade is history, whether people like that or not, and there's very strong opinions on that issue. But the reality is Roe v. Wade is history, and the Supreme Court has made it crystal clear that it is now up to the states to regulate the issue of abortion. And so we in Pennsylvania, we currently have the Abortion Control Act, which Governor Casey was a strong advocate for and was signed many, many years ago. And so the question then is, where do the voters of this Commonwealth think we should go in terms of abortion? And so we have advanced so far two questions, basically. One, whether or not taxpayer funding should be used for elective abortions, and whether or not our Constitution has in it a fundamental right to abortion. And what I mean by that, and we have to be very careful in how this is described, but if you think about the tenets of Roe v. Wade, the United States Supreme Court said that the right to an abortion is inherent in our Constitution. The current Supreme Court has said they were incorrect. There is legal maneuvering happening right now in Pennsylvania to try to get our Supreme Court to say that abortion is an inherent right, which would effectively throw out our Abortion Control Act. So what we think we need to do is allow the voters to bring clarity to that issue within our state constitution so we don't get in another judicial morass like we did over Roe v. Wade for the last 50 or so years.
Yeah, like I said, we could go on and on and on here.
We could.
Meanwhile, a little bit of a break in Harrisburg. What's the schedule like for you now that the budget is wrapped up and you got a little less pressure on you?
Well, it's now district focused. I was just up to Punxsutawney yesterday, getting used to some of the new community that I'll be representing as a result of reapportionment. So that was a good day yesterday, and I'm looking forward to representing the Punxsutawney area very much. I'm in a contest to kiss a pig for the Evergreen After School Club. So if anybody would like me to kiss Olivia the pig at the Indiana County Fair, donations are certainly welcome. We'll be at Indiana Regional Medical Center this evening to meet the new residents with the residency program, which I think is important. And then next week I'll be over in Armstrong County. Chanock Valley Days, Armstrong County Folk Fest is coming up. A lot of great community events, and it's good to be home, and it's good to be talking again with real people about real issues.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming in to visit with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd.
He is Senator Joe Pittman. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.